Let's talk about what we could see from other teams in the American League Central this winter. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, November 26th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, welcome all. Happy Tuesday, everybody. So today we are going to take a look around the American League Central, and we'll certainly talk a little bit of Tigers specifically and kind of their standing within the division. But we do this, every offseason, every preseason as well. And obviously we talk about the American League Central quite a bit throughout the regular season, in between game recaps and looking around the rest of the division and whatnot. But I think it's important to do this now before a flurry of moves happen, so that we can kind of talk about where all of our heads are at in terms of the Tigers standing in the American League Central. This is a division that has been a laughingstock for years and years and years. And then this past season in 2024 exploded and was the exact opposite. And there was a ton of award winners in the AL Central. You had 3 playoff teams in the AL Central, with the Twins having a solid season as well. It was pretty much just the White Sox being historically awful, and then the other 4 teams were good to playoff caliber. So what do they have to do to get better? Because as much as we love to talk about here on what the Tigers need to do, because that's our main focus, and that will always be our main focus, I do think it's important to take, even if it's just a day, and just talk about, there's 29 other fan bases that are all trying to get better too. And that's something that I think is very quickly forgotten. This is not just, this, we should do this and this and this, and no other team is a factor. No, everyone else is competing against you as well and trying to get better too. So I think when looking at our division counterparts, and you're talking about a division that did have 3 playoff teams in it, obviously yourself included, and a solid Twins team. And even the White Sox. I'm not here to tell you the White Sox are going to be any good. They're not. But are they going to be one of the worst teams we've ever seen again? Probably not. That seems really difficult to pull off 2 years in a row, right? Maybe they're just like the worst team in baseball rather than the worst team of all time, which is the difference of double-digit wins potentially. So, you know what I mean? I think it is important to just get talk about the areas that other teams need to improve as well. What if somebody else in the division needs a third baseman? Okay, well then Bregman's going to be a lot harder to get and a lot more important. All these other teams are going to be looking for starting pitchers. There's a lot of overlap potentially there, and I think that this conversation is a good one to have for that reason. We're going to start off with maybe the biggest surprise team in the division, and that was the Kansas City Royals. I will put my hand up and be the first to say that I was unbelievably wrong about the Kansas City Royals this year. A lot of people had the Royals projected as this team that was going to finish with a win total in the high 70s or low 80s, and I did not buy it at all. In 2023, the Oakland A's were also historically bad, and the Royals were only a few games better than them. And I thought, based on, they had an active offseason, but I didn't think they brought in any huge dynamic game changers. But clearly they did get a lot better. They ended with an 86-76 record in 2024, made the postseason, beat the Baltimore Orioles in the wild card round, lost to the Yankees 3-1, obviously, in the ALDS. So I think this team starts and ends with Bobby Witt Jr., and that's not a very hot take. He was the unanimous runner-up for American League Most Valuable Player, which if we have time, we'll talk about a little bit at the end of the show. This dude put up like a 10-ish WAR season. Like legitimately one of the best seasons by a shortstop that we've seen in quite some time. He was unbelievable. He led the American League in batting average, but also and like hits, obviously, whatnot, but also had 109 RBIs, over 30 homers, and 31 stolen bases as well. He was incredible. The defense has gotten worlds better, rather, since his rookie season where he had a lot of errors. He is a star. And so when you look at what the Royals may add or what the Royals might want to add this year, I think it's pretty comfortably on the offensive side of the ball. And we'll talk about their pitching in a second, but you look at this lineup, their outfield was terrible. Like legitimately, their outfield was a joke. All of their outfielders had 0 or less baseball reference WAR, our WAR, except for Kyle Isabel, and he only had positive because he's such a good defender. He hit terribly just like the rest of them. So I would imagine they're going to be looking for some outfield help. Their DH had negative WAR. Now, that was kind of a revolving door. They didn't have one, just kind of permanent DH like the Tigers did with Miggy for all those years. But, I mean, you look around, the bench was not full of guys that were putting up very high statistical seasons. A lot of OPSs in the 500s and 600s. It was really Bobby Witt Jr. pushing in 1,000 OPS. Then when Pasquantino was healthy, putting up a solid, 20 home run season. Salvador Perez doing Salvador Perez things. Solid offensive season. Michael Massey, solid offensive season. But like there was no one else that was even remotely close to like an upper echelon hitter on this team. And if they add one or even two more of those and pair that with Bobby Witt Jr. and their rotation, that was phenomenal. Seth Lugo was runner-up for Cy Young. Cole Reagans was 4th for Cy Young. They had 2 top 5 Cy Young finishers. Brady Singer, who they just traded away, was phenomenal this year. He finally got back on the horse and was, I say phenomenal. He really struggled the last couple of years and got back on track, had a 3.7 ERA. I probably shouldn't over-exaggerate, but he took a step in the right direction. Again, they did just trade him away. Michael Wacha, really good season as well. 3.35 ERA, 13 wins. Like their bullpen just struggled. And so I think, first off, Kyle Singer for Jonathan India is a very intriguing move for them because India is more of a bat-first type of player, struggles defensively a little bit, but is going to provide a little bit more offense for a team that, as I just pointed out, is kind of looking for that. But that with that top 3 or 4 in the rotation is going to be competitive. And if they go out and get a reliever or two as well, their back end of their bullpen was just terrible this year. But if they can iron that out, you're talking about a team that could be a perennial, mid 80s win type of team in the American League Central. And I guess the reason I start with them is, again, because they were the biggest surprise to me personally, but also because when I think about the future, a lot of these pieces are coming back this year. This wasn't like a one and done run. And as I said, this conversation starts and ends with Bobby Witt Jr. So let's end it with Bobby Witt Jr. I think as long as this dude is on the Royals, they're going to have a chance. And I know that baseball is so much more team-oriented than a lot of other sports, and I'm not saying that Bobby Witt, like we saw Mike Trout miss the playoffs for all those years in LA. Like, I'm not saying one player can do it all, but it certainly raises your floor. And if you can just surround a player of that caliber, a 10-WAR season caliber player, with just decent pitching, a decent bullpen, and decent supporting casts offensively, you're going to have, an over 500 record and be in the mix for the division year in and year out, and certainly for a wild card spot now with the expanded postseason. So the Royals are a team to watch this winter. I am desperately rooting against them getting any more offensive help. That is for the Tigers fan in me, does not want anybody that can hit a baseball to go to the Royals this winter. That's kind of where I'm at, because I think they're probably one or two legit bats away from being an 86 win team year in and year out. Let's talk about the other four teams. We'll end with the Tigers, obviously. We'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Ibotta. Big holidays mean big family get-togethers, so gather your loved ones and enjoy all of the holiday traditions you cherish with the help of cash back from Ibotta. Grocery bills can really add up, especially this time of year, so this month, Ibotta is giving new users 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Just add the offers in the app to redeem for everything you need to make your Thanksgiving feast complete. All you have to do is shop at your favorite retailers and upload your receipt. Other apps give you points that don't really amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, gift cards, you name it. You can also earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and so much more. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast starting November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Also got to talk to y'all about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best, and they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier than it already was with Game Time. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They have so many great features. The Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it. They got it. They also have the lowest price guarantee. Well, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow as we keep the offseason train rolling along. Today, we're talking about other teams in the American League Central. We spent segment 1 kind of laying the groundwork for the entire division and then obviously talking about the Royals. Let's jump over to the Cleveland Guardians, who finished at first place in the AL Central this year and made it to the ALCS before getting honestly kind of crushed by the Yankees. Lost 4-1 in the ALCS. 92-69 record, though. Just what were they, a game back from the Yankees for the 1 seed? 1 or 2 games back. They were down the stretch there with a week or two left. They were still in it to finish with the best record in the American League. You know, it's not as dramatic as the Royals, but I think you can have a very similar type of conversation with J-Ram and the Guardians as you can with Bobby Witt Jr. and the Royals. Like, as long as Jose Ramirez is in this lineup and the supporting cast is decent, they're going to be okay, right? And I think that is why I have always been so high on the Guardians going into every season. And that doesn't mean I've been right every year. A couple of years ago, they massively underperformed and their offense was terrible. But I think that for me, they have a history of developing pitching and they have J-Ram. And those two things are going to carry them to the promised land more times than not, that being just, like a winning record in the AL Central or the postseason, even if it's not a deep postseason run necessarily. J-Ram this year, 5th in MVP voting, but the supporting cast really was there more than it has been in years past for Cleveland. Steven Kwan, when he was healthy, was fantastic this season, around an 800 OPS, just like never struck out. He walked more than he struck out this year, was an all-star, a gold glove, had a 4-win season. Andres Jimenez as well has kind of been up and down so far. The offense wasn't great this year, and I think that's still something they're waiting for him to get back to, because his first year in Cleveland, I want to say it was his first year in Cleveland, he hit pretty well. But he was an absolute wizard defensively, deserved the Gold Glove, absolutely, at second base. Josh Naylor was another big bat for them. In the first half, he was legitimately one of the best hitters in baseball. Did cool down a lot in the second half, which is why we saw Cleveland kind of plateau a little bit. But this is a team that's supporting cast has gotten better. And I think they are just in the business of trying to add those pieces between the margins to make it even a little bit better and better, incrementally improved better each season. They had some decent bench performances as well. Daniel Schneemann got off to a good start. Obviously, big Christmas, Noel, with a big home run in the postseason against the Yankees, but also with a really solid, he was a good power bat. Didn't fit really the MO of the rest of the team, has a low average, doesn't get on base a ton, but just crushes the baseball when he hits it. And that's something that I think this team kind of wanted and needed a little bit as well. On the pitching side of things, it wasn't the same old starting pitching factory we've seen from Cleveland in the past, but still some decent seasons. Tanner Bybee, we all know and are scared of him. Ben Lively had a really solid year for them, but Cookie Carrasco struggled. Logan Allen struggled. Gavin Williams struggled. Tristan McKenzie struggled a lot. I just listed 4 guys that all finished with negative R-WAR. That's an issue. And so I think when you're looking at the starting pitching market, not the big name because it's Cleveland, they won't spend a ton of money. But if you're looking at the 1 to 2 year deal starting pitching market, you have to factor in Cleveland as a suitor. And that's going to sting a little bit more, right? Similar with Lugo last year. I had a couple people that were in my comments all the time, and I give them a ton of credit because I ended up being very right last winter about how they would have gone after Seth Lugo, and look at the season he had and went to a division rival. That stings twice as bad. And so I think that is something that we have to pay attention to this winter is, okay, starting pitchers. Cleveland is going to want some starting pitchers. They're set with bullpen. They have the best bullpen in baseball. They obviously traded one of their prominent, Eli Morgan, one of their prominent relievers this year that was fantastic for them over the last couple of seasons. And it doesn't even matter. They still have 5 or 4 guys that had sub-2 ERAs this year and almost 80 games pitched for each of them. And they have the best reliever in baseball closing it out. A 4.5 WAR season for a closer is just absolutely disgusting. So that's where I think Cleveland stands. Same boat as Kansas City offensively, are probably going to look for some minor upgrades here and there to just make the offense more consistent. But I think they're really going to want to do their damage in the starting pitching department because it struggled a lot this past season outside of the top 2. Let's talk about the Minnesota. No, we're going to save the Twins for segment 3. I lied. Let's talk about the White Sox because I think that's a quicker conversation just because they're still so bad. 41 and 121, the most losses in a single season in the modern era of baseball. The reason why this is a quick conversation that I'm doing right now at the end of a segment is because they need everything. What do they need? Well, they just lost 121 games, man. They did not have a single batter that had an OPS plus over 100. I don't think. I think every single starter, Tommy Pham, that's their only one. They had one on the entire roster, and it was Tommy Pham, who only played in 70 games and finished with exactly 0 WAR. And he only had a 710 OPS. He was barely better than league average. Everybody else was a below league average hitter. A lot of these guys won't be on the team next year. They're trying to trade Benintendi. He just put up a negative 1-win season, and he hit 229 with, I don't know. I don't know how I don't know how they're going to be able to pull that off, but I think they should seriously consider trading Luis Robert Jr. I think you have to trade the assets you have. And I know that might make you, dare I say even worse, but he only played in 100 games last year anyway. Starting rotation, they have Garrett Crochet, who's phenomenal. Eric Fetty, I want to give Eric Fetty a ton of credit. This is a guy that was kind of forgotten about. and went with the Nationals, went to the KBO and pitched in Korea, won like the KBO Cy Young and was the best pitcher in the league, came back and put together a really solid season. So I want to give him his flowers and give him a ton of credit. Outside of those two, I mean, it wasn't as bad as I guess you would expect for a 121 loss team, but the bullpen was an absolute atrocity, and the offense, as we mentioned, was just terrible. So I don't expect the White Sox to spend a ton of money. I think Jerry Reinsdorf's an absolute clown, and I even though they're a division rival, I genuinely feel bad for White Sox fans. I have several friends who are diehard White Sox fans. We talk about it all the time. I feel terrible for them. I don't expect them to be big players in the free agent market. And if you're thinking, oh, like, what do they need? Everything. There you go. Conversation over. Let's talk about the Minnesota Twins and then where your Detroit Tigers stand going into this winter and this offseason. We'll talk about that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place a live bet on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of a game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. Let's talk about the Minnesota Twins, who finished with an 82-80 record. The Twins won the division in 2023, and I think going into the year, a lot of people expected them to be the favorites in the division again. Well, they didn't have a bad year. They also clearly didn't make the playoffs, barely missed out in the postseason thanks to the run by the Royals and the Tigers, but still finished over 500 and still have a lot of really nice pieces. They got a really solid season from Carlos Santana, who's 38, about to be 39 years old. He's going to be a free agent again, so we'll see what they do at first base, but they got a really solid season from him. Ryan Jeffers had a really solid season behind the plate. Carlos Correa, when he played, had a solid season, but did miss half of the season. Byron Buxton, you know what? Buxton's another one. Like, he was so good when he played, but he played in 102 games, honestly. And this like legitimately made me emotional. I saw, maybe it was his mother, someone in his family on social media, posted a huge celebratory thing when he played his 100th game of the season. And I was like, man, that is just, that'll get you. That'll really tug on the heartstrings there. Like, just, he's had such a rough go and he's such an incredible talent. And so I know that it doesn't benefit the Tigers, but as just a lover of the game of baseball, I want Byron Buxton to play baseball, man. And I hope that he's still only 30. Like, I hope that we can, see that and he can play more center field and truly play every day, because there are few players who are as exciting as he is when he is fully healthy. So they have some solid supporting pieces on this offensive in this lineup on the offensive side of the ball. I think they might be looking for something offensively. Manuel Margot, fine, I guess. So they're going to have to go after some outfielders this year. Tigers obviously in the business for righty outfielders if they are going to add an outfielder, period, but that shouldn't overlap too terribly much. They will need a first baseman. Obviously, that's a market that the Tigers are potentially looking at as well. So you could be in a battle for a big name first baseman with a division rival, which is, again, obviously a huge deal. Third base, Jose Miranda was okay for them, but if an upgrade came along, I can't imagine they would say no. Willie Castro, fantastic utility season. Numbers went down after the All-Star break a little bit, but was an All-Star this year. Royce Lewis, another guy who just can't stay healthy, and when he has been healthy has been phenomenal. just a team full of guys that, just can't seem to put it all together. On the pitching side of things, Pablo Lopez wasn't as good as he was in 2023. Bailey Ober wasn't as good as we expected him to be. Joe Ryan was still pretty darn good, but I guess could have been a little bit better. Simeon Woods Richardson was a pretty nice story for them, but still had like an ERA over 4. Like this team didn't have like a true ace, and I think that is one of, if not the biggest reason, besides just staying healthy, probably. That one of the biggest things that bit them was that, and then like, Johan Duran having an ERA over 3.5 was kind of unexpected. But their bullpen was solid enough. They had some really good production. Griffin Jacks really had a coming out party this year. So I think that the Twins are probably in the market for some starting pitching and probably, again, those offensive positions we named. But the weird thing about the Twins is last year, they sat on their hands. They did what every fan base absolutely hates. They won the division, looked around and said, well, everybody else here sucks, and did nothing. If anything, they tried to shave payroll last year, and it bit them, and it cost them. And the Tigers obviously had their fantastic second half, but you look at how active the Royals were and how beneficial that was for the Royals, as well as Bobby Witt Jr. putting up a 10-WAR season, which is something you can't really plan for. I guess maybe you can now going forward. But my point is, I think when I think of the Twins, I think of a team that is just going to be around this. And some years they will stay healthy enough and they'll get some good enough performances from the guys they keep to get over the hump and have an 88-win season and make the playoffs. And some years they're going to have 83-win seasons. It's the difference of 5 wins across a whole summer. Baseball starts when it's cold and ends when it's cold. It's a long season. 5 wins here and there just from some pieces that they already have, I think is kind of just how I view the Minnesota Twins at this point. They're like the barometer for middle of the road around 500. And that'll keep them in the mix in the second half and at the trade deadline most seasons. It's just a matter of whether they want to spend money after trying to shave payroll a year ago. Then you get to your Detroit Tigers. We're not going to go through, like the strengths and weaknesses necessarily like we have with the other teams here, because we talk about the Tigers here literally every single day. Obviously, 86-76 record, made the ALDS and took that series to 5 games against the Cleveland Guardians. My biggest thing with the Tigers is when looking around this division, I don't think that any of the teams that were good, so everybody except the White Sox, are due for a big fall off. And that is something that I think is very important to keep in mind. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, is the sole reason I wanted to do this episode, was to really highlight that point. I actually had a commenter, I don't have the name written down, so I apologize, to said commenter point this out either on yesterday's show or maybe it was 2 days ago. 2 episodes ago about the division rundown and about the fact that, the Tigers can't just sit and do nothing, because look at the rest of the division. And I completely agree. I'm not saying that this is the best division in baseball. I'm not saying this is some dangerous, like, sleeping giant and that the AL Central is going to have, like 490 win teams or anything like that, or that it's better than the AL East. I still understand the caliber of teams that are in this division, but when you compare those teams to the Detroit Tigers, it doesn't take too much convincing for an outside party to be convinced that the Tigers would go into next season projected as like the 3rd or even 4th best team in this division with where they stand right now. So the whole point of this episode is to just really highlight other teams in this division have needs, have priorities, some of which are higher than yours, and they are going to want to improve as well, and also not let the players they're interested in join a division rival that just made the postseason in the Detroit Tigers. You have to get better. And we've talked about, we've had at nauseum at this point episodes of what did the Tigers need to add? What, position by position breakdown, player by player breakdown, whatever. That is it. We've had that conversation a lot, but I think looking at these other teams really highlights, okay, how much better do the Tigers need to be than the Royals at this? right? What do the Tigers need to bring in to have their starting rotation be considerably better than the Kansas City Royals? What do they need to make their bullpen better than the Cleveland Guardians? Is that even obtainable in a winter? What do they need to do to have their offense not be Riley Green, Parker Meadows, and a supporting cast? Because a lot of other teams in this division are one player in a supporting cast. So if you can be more well-rounded, you can be a better offense than a lot of these teams. It's available. It's within reach. Improvement to the point of being better than your division foes is in reach, but you have to do something. And I'm not saying they're not doing anything. I think that's a humorous thing I kind of see online where people are like, look, we're not doing anything. No one's done anything except the Angels. Like the Angels are just signing people left and right. Nobody else has done anything all offseason. It's very early. It's not even December. It's not even winter meetings. I'm sure they will make additions. The point isn't to be like, why aren't they doing it? That's not the point of the show. This is simply just improvement to the point of postseason again next year is obtainable. I genuinely believe that with the internal growth that you're going to have and the additions that are available for you this winter, but you have to make them. Okay. We'll save our award conversation for tomorrow. It's not anything like deep. It'll just be one segment, if that. Just want to talk about how the AL and NL MVP voting and talk about Tyler Holton getting an MVP vote and how cool that is. We will do that tomorrow. Appreciate you all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shots to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all then, baby. Go Tigers.